Good evening, everybody. Mr. Chairman, members of the Central Committee, and honorees this evening. Thank you for your volunteerism and support of the party. Without you, the principles of our party would not shine as brightly as they do because of your hard work, and the success that we have in the ballot box and in governing isn't possible if we aren't working together as a team. So I greatly appreciate the opportunity to come before you tonight. I did have a PowerPoint prepared, and don't want to get you done by PowerPoint at this late hour, so happy to send that electronically to anybody who would like to have more detail. I'm going to go through my remarks and then make sure there's time for questions and answers, so happy to take those from you as well. And again, on our city's website, there's just a ton of information on the Angels agreement. So before I get into the Angels, though, I just want to update you on how the city's doing, and things are going incredibly well. Despite what you might read in the papers or the blogs, it's the exception, not the rule, when we don't agree. We as a council, the mayor and the council, are governing in unison when it comes to balancing our budget, when it comes to restoring cash reserves, when it comes to implementing pension reform. There are a number of issues that we are in total agreement on and total alignment on, and it is in the best interest of our residents. And I'm very pleased to serve and honored to serve with the people who are elected to serve in the city of Anaheim. With regard to budget, with regard to Angels negotiations, we're at the very beginning of what is going to be a complicated contract to develop. And we have a number of issues that are going to take some time and some thought and some innovation to address. We have the fourth oldest stadium in the country. The estimated structural capital needs for that stadium right now are anywhere from $120 to $150 million. And that's structural, that's not cosmetic, that's not basic maintenance. That is plumbing and electrical and seismic and concrete and none of the sexy stuff, all of the stuff that costs an awful lot of money and doesn't necessarily make the fan experience all that much better. So above and beyond that, we have additional improvements that are needed. But one thing we do know is in Anaheim, for the last 50 years anyway, we have a city who's committed to Angels baseball. We have land that's been set aside for the sole purpose of a Major League Baseball team, and at one point in time also accommodated football. But we're known as a sports town because of the heritage of Angels baseball. So we want to continue that, our residents want to continue that, but the council is absolutely unified that any ultimate agreement must be in the best interest of Anaheim taxpayers. We are in the process of conducting an assessment. I backed the mayor up when he asked for that at the council meeting multiple times, and we are hopefully hoping to hear back from our staff. That assessment is underway. We're hoping to get that information back in mid to late February. We have additional work that's being done to determine the economics of Angels baseball in Anaheim, but we know that the direct economic value to the city is approximately $200 million annually, and that indirect and direct revenues to the city are $4 to $5 million annually. Those figures may fluctuate up or down when we have a full formal economic report, but the facts are there's significant economic value to keeping the team in Anaheim. So how do we do that and make sure we're protecting Anaheim taxpayers? The MOUs that have been approved by the council at this juncture, and many of you have seen a lot of the reporting on this, so I won't go into too much detail, but they are non-binding. They are agreements that list out discussion items for negotiations. We are at the beginning of the process, not the end of the process. A contract that comes back to us for formal approval will not just be a couple of pages of very summarized deal points. It will be a significant and complex and lengthy agreement, but one of the things we are looking at is how to develop the property that has remained dormant for the 50 years that Angels baseball has played there, and develop that property so the revenue stream can be secured to do those upgrades at the stadium, and thus totally protecting Anaheim taxpayers. We are looking at ways, Anaheim currently, as part of its cost obligation, pays $600,000 annually to a structural capital improvement fund. That obligation would go away, potentially as part of any final agreement. And then developing that land Many of you have had some concerns, and please never hesitate to contact any one of us for more information. So I'm happy to sit down over a cup of coffee or over the phone or whatever is convenient, but talk to you in more detail, because it's important and it takes a little time to explain. But the facts are, we're looking at ways to partner with the Angels to develop the capital privately and to make sure that the taxpayers are 100% protected from any liability to pay for those upgrades. We're 100% on the hook if they leave. 100%, nobody disputes that. So our goal is to make sure they stay, to make sure those capital improvements occur, and to make sure that the Angels baseball continues for another 20+ years in Anaheim and Orange County. I think it's also important to really emphasize that there's a lot of commentary that there's no chance they leave. It's very clear they don't want to go. They do want to work with us. They want to come to an agreement. But we've seen in other cities around the country, most recently in the city of Atlanta, that teams do leave. They leave even when the stadiums are only 17 years old and they go 12 miles away. Now the city of Atlanta has a 17-year-old stadium with no valuable use or purpose that will have to be demolished and totally remediated. We don't want to see that happen in Anaheim. Do I think it's likely? No. Do I think it's a possibility? Yes. I would have total hubris if I were to stand up here and tell you there's absolutely no possibility that they could or would leave if we can't come to an agreement that makes sense. But again, it has to make sense for everybody. The other important point I would really like to underscore for you tonight is that the framework that's before us, the development rights that we have discussed with the team, they are historically consistent with previous discussions with sports franchises in Anaheim. Development rights for parking were discussed with the LA Rams. Development rights for parking occurred with the NFL in 2007. And development rights were part of the agreement approved by the City Council, the Mayor and the Council in 2011 in order to secure an NBA team. Unfortunately, it fell apart for other reasons, but the Council did agree to that contract. And the purpose and point of that is to limit the exposure for Anaheim taxpayers. That is the sole purpose of that, is to limit the exposure for Anaheim taxpayers. And hopefully, as added benefit, we improve the fan experience by creating and partnering with an entity that is about professional sports, creating complementary entertainment, restaurants, and other uses that will be valuable to people when they're visiting our stadium and the surrounding property. I want to note that Anaheim is the only city in the country where public funding is not on the table for discussion. Every other city that has built a new stadium has spent upwards or committed in public financing upwards of $300 million to secure a team or to build a new stadium. We are not talking about outlays of general fund expenditures. We are talking about potentially leasing long-term land to the team to partner with them to generate that private capital and pay for those upgrades, and it would even alleviate $600,000 and other obligations the city is paying toward the stadium today. So potential taxpayer savings, but there is no general fund commitment in the MOUs, so it's not even on the table for discussion. I'll just close tonight by letting you know you have my full commitment. I've said this publicly on the dais at the City Council meetings. I'm saying it to you tonight. There is no way I'll support a final agreement that doesn't protect Anaheim taxpayers and does not make sense for the city. I won't support an agreement that doesn't ensure that the city retains control of the land now and long term, so that if Angels were ever to leave or the team were to be sold, that the value of that land stays with the city and the development that is on that land is retained within the city as well for purposes of upgrading our stadium. So we've got a long way to go, and there's obviously an awful lot of time still for, well, there's still time. I don't want to say awful lot because I don't even know when the final agreement's getting close to fruition. We get updates once a month from our legal team, but nonetheless, there is still time for feedback, and then ultimately, once we have an agreement before the council, that's when I would ask for you to genuinely weigh in as well and let us know how you feel about it, because this is a team that's not just important to the city, but to the county and the region as well. Certainly we want them there, but we also want to make sure that we're doing this in a principled way that, again, protects our Anaheim taxpayers. So with that, please never hesitate to reach out with a question, and thank you for your patience tonight. It was a pleasure to speak with you.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you, Scott, for having us here. And my colleague, Kris said exactly what I would have said, and I am in total agreement with her. So, go Angels. I want to talk about another issue that's been on the front pages of the newspapers for a very long time, and that's district elections. District elections, as some of you know, you single-member districts. You have to live in the district, and you are elected by the people in that district. In 2012, we were sued by the ACLU and 3 Hispanic plaintiffs because they believed that we were violating the California Voter Rights Act. The 2010 census showed that Anaheim is a city of 53% Hispanic, and currently we have no Hispanics on council. Anaheim is almost 157 years old, and during that time period, 4 Hispanics have been elected. But during that same period of time, only 6 women have been elected. So when you look at it that way, ladies, I think we're getting short end of the stick.
I think districts for women.
That's right, they're all over the place. And in the 2012 election, it was determined and showed that only 12% of the Hispanics actually voted. And the most heavily Hispanic district in the city was not won by a Hispanic, obviously, it was won by Jordan Brandman. So it's not a matter of representation, it's a matter of participation. If you do not participate in elections, as we all know, we have all precincts we get involved, you can't get elected. So when I worked precincts for 3 months to win this seat, this issue came up exactly twice. And I talked to thousands and thousands of people. When you ask people, who would you like to have represent you? Would you like to be able to talk to only one person? Or would you like to be able to talk to 5 people?
Quality over quantity.
What?
Yep, just ignore him. He's out of order. Out of order.
Thank you. Anyway, if you are in a district city, you can only talk to the person that in your district, because the other people do not care about what you think or what you want, because you think you cannot vote for them. When you're in that large city, as all these cities here represent are at large, you have, except for Santa Ana, Newport, which is a hybrid, you have the ability to talk to anybody who is on council. This lawsuit, which will probably be upwards of $2 million, and you've read that in the papers, but this lawsuit would have and should have been settled almost a year ago, and the cost for the attorneys would have been quite less. But the plaintiffs and the ACLU would not agree to let the voters vote on this issue. They wanted districts to come into play in Anaheim by judicial fiat. When it's been told that or said that if we had put this on the ballot in November of 2012, that would have ended it. Districts would have been voted on up or down. The fact of the matter is that the plaintiffs and the ACLU would not have let that go. They would still have sued us. They would still have been negotiating in the lawsuit. And they did say that they would not let the voters vote. They absolutely wanted a judge to say, you will go to districts. So that is one issue that I wanted to talk to you about. We did settle this when the plaintiffs finally decided that they would settle this. And they agreed to put it on the ballot. And they agreed to stop the litigation. And we did not agree that we were not violating the California Voter Rights Act. So we decided to settle, and it was a unanimous vote. Another thing that's happening in the city is we own our convention center, and it's the largest convention center in this west of Las Vegas. But we need to expand it. The last time we expanded the convention center was in 2001, and it was because our largest conventions were telling us that they were not going to renew their contracts because they could not come. They were growing and we were staying stagnant. So this year we are going to be expanding it, and again our largest conventions are saying if you do not expand, we are not going to continue. Our largest convention, NAM, the National Association of Music Merchants, is coming here this week. They will bring 95,000 people to the city of Anaheim. But the city of Anaheim is not the only city that gets a benefit from this. The whole county gets a benefit from their being in town. We also need to increase meeting spaces, and we need to have space for larger conventions, that I mentioned, and we need to have more space so we can have concurrent events. We will have two funding sources for this. In 2010, the hoteliers both in Anaheim and Garden Grove agreed to put 2% more on their bed tax for TOT, the transit occupancy tax. That money was put into a tourism improvement fund, and that money was earmarked to help with the expansion of the convention center. We also will be going and refinancing our debt, so that'll be another funding source. It's a public-private partnership between the city and the hoteliers. This will enable us to have more and bigger, better conventions. The Heart Association is coming back only if we expand the convention center. We support the building of 2 4-star hotels recently, which are needed for the attendees of these bigger, more prestigious conventions. Anaheim has only 2 4-star hotel properties, and they are on Disney property. So when we have these big conventions coming in, other cities like Laguna and Newport Beach get the people who want to stay in a 4-star hotel instead of having them stay in Anaheim. I have flyers at the table talking about the Garden Walk hotels. This is very controversial last year. There was a lot of misinformation in the papers last year. So I was here in 1999 when this project was first approved by a 5-0 vote. Tom Tate, Tom Daly, Shirley McCracken, Frank Feldhaus, and I all supported this. So you can see by this, I did say when I was running, I would not support the $158 million to the developer. In 2013, that development agreement changed dramatically, and that's why I voted for it. So please take a copy, it's very interesting reading. And I thank you so much for your time. Anaheim is in great shape. We just graduated 12 new firefighters in Anaheim on Friday. So thank you again.
I know the hour's late, and you guys can stay up here if there's any questions, but are there any questions, by the way? I have a few items. I've talked to many of the council members in Anaheim, and I got to tell you, there's no linear path here to understand it unless you're involved in it full time. But let me basically address what I've gleaned out of this, because I have some concerns about this fight in Anaheim and among Republicans. And we don't like that. In a year, as Mr. Pollitt said, we need to unite and defeat the Democrats. Let me just address the stadium issue, if I can, a little bit. I think Kris did a great job of putting things in perspective. But it's hard to figure out all the facts there. I've talked to Tom, I've talked to Kris, talked to many involved in this. The bottom line is the Angels, or the city, owns that stadium. They built it 50 years ago. How many, 60 years ago? They built it 50 years ago, and it's been 365 days, 24/7, subjected to the elements, and nobody disputes that it needs to be fixed up. The question is how much, and you want a Cadillac, you want $1 billion stadium, you want $500 million, you want is it 180 to repair, basic repairs? 120 to 150, the basic repairs. And the question is, who repairs it? The city made this investment many years ago to have a team there. And they bought this facility, they bought the property, and they built it. And the question is, who's responsible to repair it and bring it up to standard? And so I get the arguments, I've heard both sides. How you get them, how the city puts that money up to pay for that, I don't know, maybe through development, but it gets really complicated. So I just want to encourage all of you to feel free to call Tom, call Kris, call whoever if you have real concerns. I pray to God that our Central Committee does not vote on this issue. I mean, it's really complicated, and And without full facts, I mean, there's a reason we have representative government, but it's a complicated issue. So I'm kind of like watching that, let it sort out. You know, Tom Tate's a trusted friend. He spoke to this committee. He had some excellent points to make. With respect to districts, though, I thought this was going to be about stadium. Many of you know I supported a districts initiative in Huntington Beach. It lost. But it lost because the city manipulated the outcome. The bottom line is we felt in Huntington Beach that all the representation was coming from downtown and the harbor. And the rest of the city was not being represented. All the people came from that area, so you always knew the outcome. We thought of district elections, you could have people walking their precincts and getting elected in that precinct. That really is the democracy that we all talk about. The question is, will you lose a Republican seat in Anaheim? I don't know. The opponents say you will. But I think for every Democrat that picks up a seat, there's other cities, if you had district representation, that Republicans would pick up the seat, or the right Republicans would pick up the seats. But the concern I heard tonight about district elections is that this was all done by the ACLU, and they did file a lawsuit. But I want to clarify here that the city council voted twice not to put district elections on the ballot. Now, I'll confess, I don't know all the reasons or all the facts behind that. But to say that the group that filed suit is in error kind of leaves some of the facts out. They tried to get district elections over there more than once. They filed suit, and yes, a lot of money was spent on both sides, and there was a settlement, and now there's going to be a vote. And was it a 5-0 vote for district elections?
Well, you have some facts.
Okay, help me. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. When we were sued, I was not on the council at the time, Kris was. Tom wanted to put districts on the ballot immediately, and that would have been in the November 2012 election, after we had been sued. And as I alluded to, in a letter from September of 2012, the plaintiff said, great, but we will continue the litigation because we think you were violating the California Voter Rights Act. So they had no intention of having the people vote, and they did say that specifically. We want the judge to make you put this on the ballot. I mean, to make you go to single-member districts. And as I mentioned, the person with the most Hispanic population, Jordan Brandman, won. There's a city, Modesto, they were forced to go to single-member districts, and to this date, not one Hispanic has been elected. So just because you go to district does not guarantee that you're going to get somebody who looks like you elected. And I think Kris wanted to address that too. Oh, we did vote to put the hybrid that's in Santa Ana and Newport on the ballot, which would have been you live in your district, but you're elected at large. We proposed that, and that was going to be on this June's election. But because of the settlement, we have to take that one off because the district, the pure districts, is going on the ballot in November of 2014. That was expressly supported by the plaintiffs. We wanted to put it in June. They said no, it's going on in November.
Hi everyone, and the hour again is late, and this is an issue that again is complex and really does deserve some quality time for us to discuss as a party and as individuals, because it isn't just an Anaheim issue. Every city in the county is likely to deal with the same legal issues that have been put before the city. But I was on the council when we were sued. The reason, I can only share with you the reason I didn't support putting the ballot measures before this recent settlement is none of the legal protections we had in place today were there prior to the settlement we have in place today. There was no commitment to dismiss the case with prejudice, which means they can't refile depending on what happens with the electorate. And most importantly, and there's a plaintiff's letter on the city's website, I encourage you to read it, most importantly, they refused to allow a vote of the people as a term for settlement. And so Scott, I love you dearly as a friend, but I know you haven't been immersed in this. The facts are, if we had moved forward the ballot initiative before, we would have had no legal protections, the litigation would have continued, and the city would still be sitting on an unlimited number of legal escalating bills. We had to secure the full settlement, and we had to make sure our democratic rights were protected in Anaheim. And then you got the full unanimous support from the council. We didn't have that until then. The plaintiff's information and much more will be coming forward once the settlement's fully implemented. Will be available for you to review. But every city's at risk for being sued. The people that are suing the cities and other school districts and other public agencies on grounds that they are violating the CVRA are literally using our public agencies as ATMs. They are running down the clock, and they'll just give you a great example up the street in the city of Whittier. 20,000 people, it's a very small city. They are being sued as well. That council did move quickly to put the question to the voters. The lawsuit's still in place. They're still escalating legal bills. They're still dealing with an extraordinary challenge in front of them. And if the electorate doesn't support districts in Whittier, their case is harmed when it continues in the courts, and especially if that happens and the vote goes down based on racial or polarized lines. So this is a very complex issue. There is much more to come. We should be educated, and regardless of where you stand on districts, the cities have big questions coming in front of them, so a lot more than we have time to handle tonight, but I appreciate the opportunity to respond. Thank you.
I just want to go back to something you, Scott, you said about the Angels deal, because I was in council when this happened. That land has been available for sale for many, many, many years. In 1998, there was a company, Gotcha Glacier. They came, and because of the economy or whatever, they disappeared. Then 2 or 3 other groups came in. The last time that anybody came knocking at the door of City Hall and wanted to develop that land was in 2007. It was Archstone Smith. It was a mixed-use property, and they needed tens of millions of dollars in city subsidies to even make it happen. And then the recession happened and they left. But this is a deal that Artie Moreno is willing to develop around the property. So somebody's willing to develop it, and we keep the land, and that pays for the improvements in the stadium. That's some of the things that we need to negotiate.
Okay, thank you. Are you any more illuminated on this issue, or you maybe want to go for some private conversations? One final question I have is related to the TOT. You know, the 158 million. You read about that one? Okay. Tom Tate was over there fighting against that. I think he voted against it. The issue that concerns me, Lucille, because you are challenging Tom Tate, he's an incumbent in good favor with this party, is you campaigned on allowing the voters to decide on a TOT. Okay, I will. But you can answer it too. So you campaigned on allowing the voters to vote on any TOT, because the first one was invalidated because of a Brown Act violation, right? And then it came back to the council. In the interim, you got elected, and then you voted without going to the voters. Why did you do that?
On the face of it, and actually a person who was here earlier, she agreed with me. When you have something, a city as large as Anaheim, and you are looking for people and businesses to come in and develop, and you're trying to reduce regulations and reduce the amount of money it costs to go from here to final approval, you want to be as helpful as you can. If anything that comes to the city had to be voted on, if somebody wants to build a hotel, and you want to give them a rebate, which we've done in the past, as that article will testify, if every time you do that, you have to go to a vote of the people, are you going to do a special election? Who's going to pay for the special election? The taxpayer or the developer? Or are you going to wait till the next election comes, either June, November, whatever? But it's going to be every 2 years. You will absolutely stop development in its tracks. And we've had history of development, and particularly hotels, going to Garden Grove, because Garden Grove to this day still does free land, TOT rebate and sales tax rebate. Anaheim has never done that. We did it once in the early 2000s, and we gave 50% of TOT for new development, and one hotelier took advantage of that. But Anaheim does not give everything away that Garden Grove does. And I just think if you had a ballot, you had a vote on every single issue that came to you, you would stop progress.
Oh my God,
You have a question?
oh my God. Just because someone else is affecting bad policy doesn't make bad policy okay in your city. That's just
I never said it did.
well, you did. You think that because Garden Grove is giving away more than you're giving away, that somehow or another makes the fact that you've given away taxpayer dollars. Okay, my question is this. I got a couple of them. I'm going to read from the Republican Party platform under the economic plank of that platform. One specific sentence. The government should work to ensure that markets are free and that there is genuine competition. That's what the Republican Party believes. Now, from what I see here, from what I understand, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I do think it's wonderful that we have women, in an elected office, so I applaud you for that. You're a woman. So $158 million for one hotelier, how does that facilitate fair competition? And it appears to me that Jordan Brandman, who's a Democrat, he voted, yeah, let's give this away. He's voting in lockstep with you, Eastman, Murray. And Mayor Tom Tate is the one who's voting in accordance with Republican principles. Now, you stated when you were up there that the development agreement changed dramatically. Please, just tell me, number one, how does this facilitate fair competition? And number two, how did it change dramatically enough that one person gets the benefit and not everyone else? And if you wanted to give everybody else a rebate, I'd say go for it. I'd say do that, but not just one hotelier.
Well, that's an ordinance that is coming back to council. That we said if anybody, any hotelier, any developer wants to go to a 4-star, we will give you a similar thing if you need it. Remember, the economy is getting a little stronger. The economy has been pretty bad in the last couple of years. And you're right, the Garden Walk where these hotels are should never have been open unless the hotels have been built. I absolutely agree with that. And because so many businesses left because of the economy. But the agreement that was initially done, that was overruled by the courts, that was an 80% TOT. Okay. And the one, and I told the developers, there's no way that I would support that because I did think that 80% to a developer was inappropriate. So they worked with us. They said, we'll get 70% of the TOT. Remember, if these hotels are never built, if nobody stays there, if they don't build to a 4-star, they're not going to get penny one. And they also, so the city gets 10%, and 20% goes off to pay for the resort bonds, which have been in effect since the mid-90s when the city redeveloped the whole resort area, which was $500 million in bond indebtedness. And they also promised Anaheim workers would get the jobs first. And the construction people are about 50% unemployment.
Can I, on the point, can I ask just to answer the original question before you answer or ask the next one? Did you campaign under the promise to submit these TOTs to the voters?
I never put, it was never in my literature.
Wait. I mean, whether you put it in writing or not, did you campaign on it, yes or no?
I told a few people I would do it. That was not a big issue. Big issue for me was public safety.
So you told a few people you would put it on the ballot, and you committed that to Tom Tate as well, right?
Right.
And then you didn't. You just voted it out.
Well, the fact of the matter is you needed 3 votes, and I knew when nobody seconded it, there was not a 3rd vote.
Okay, so you did vote it out. Okay. You're Deb and then Alan.
Okay, sure. I'm paraphrasing you. You're saying if they need it. So you're saying that if a developer comes in and they need $158 million of taxpayer money, that you think you should give it to them, you think you should. I can tell you from listening to people in Anaheim, they disagree with you on that. The thing that concerns me the most about this is that it appears that that is the point where a huge rift was created amongst the Republican majority that should be governing by Republican principles. I have another question that I'd like to try to understand, and I might just be a little fuzzy on this. Why were the negotiations with Anaheim Angels or Anaheim Los Angeles Angels or whatever they call themselves now, why was that opened up? I understood from the briefing that the Mayor Tate gave that things would be locked in 2016 if no additional action had been taken, and that the mayor was actually broadsided when this whole idea of opening up this MOU was brought forward at a council meeting. So help me understand that, and I'm going to follow up because this is kind of related.
We need to be quicker though.
I'm trying to lay out why I'm confused. I want to understand how giving away 155 acres of prime real estate to Artie Marino for $1 a year is in the best interest of the taxpayers of Anaheim. Those two questions will do for now.
Can we hold off? Are there any more questions on the TOT issue? If there are none, we'll move on to the other issues. Alan, what was your topic?
Lucille, I had a quick process question. I disagree, first of all, with your crony capitalism, but beyond that, you're running as a Republican against an incumbent Republican who's, in my opinion, and I think a lot of other people on this committee, very good standing. And there's one Democrat running. So are you planning on splitting the vote and electing Lori Galloway right now?
I have absolutely no intentions of doing that.
Okay.
Why? Okay.
Okay.
I'll talk to you after that. Okay. Deb, to your question, I didn't understand the first part because I didn't get that at all. 2016, if we didn't do anything, the MOU would have been 2016.
That's what I understand.
That's absolutely wrong.
Okay.
And actually, I know who put the dollar figure in, and that was a mistake. I will not give the land away for $1. That is something that the mayor keeps saying we're doing, and as Kris mentioned, we are just at the beginning point. We haven't even gotten the appraisals back of what the stadium is worth.
That's a heck of a way to open negotiations. You voted yes for that. That's a crazy way to open negotiations.
Okay, thank you, Lucille. Thank you, Kris. Thank you for clarifying the district issues. That's helpful. And I agree with you that this is not going away. Under the Voting Rights Act, every city is going to have to deal with this eventually, except for maybe Villa Park.
We are.
Okay. But thank you, ladies, for coming in, making those clarifications. There's a lot more information here, guys. You can see there's certain things were confirmed for me tonight. There's certain things that I learned tonight. And if you want to weigh in on this, I suggest you roll your sleeves up and learn. But thank you guys for coming in and giving those answers and explaining that. With that said, we have officer reports that